everyone, and welcome to This Week in Games number 306, where we're going to go through all kinds of game industry news and bring you up to speed on how things are going. So here's what we have going on today. Kress is back, and so he fires back at us after being out last week. I think I listened back and I was like, oh yeah, we did make fun of him throughout the whole presentation.
How dare you mock me? How dare you, Mr. Phillip
Stop
Black?
it, Jen. Just stop it. Kress, I say that now in real life all the time. All right, anyway, so here's the other things we have. Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is out, and we're going to take a look at how it's doing. Zynga's Rollick soft launches a Barbie merge game, and I have feedback for them. If anyone ever takes a toy brand to video games, please, for the love of God, just call me first, is my recap on the feedback. So hi, I'm Jen Donahoe, strategic marketing consultant at Jade Inferno and Beta Hat. And today we have Phillip Black, game economist at Game Economist Consulting.
Let's cook.
Eric Kress, principal at Gossamer Consulting Group.
It's just getting worse and worse.
I know.
Phillip.
I know. And Mishka Katkoff, founder of Deconstructor of Fun.
Hello.
Hi. I think next week I'm going to make you all start doing your own intros. I think that's going to be our November surprise is going to be that. All right. So speaking of November, we're still in October. And by the time you hear this, happy Halloween. For those that celebrate it, and the guys were telling me that a while ago, it used to not be a thing in Europe, that this crazy American holiday is a thing. But, the biggest thing for me is I'm trying to figure out if Kress is going to dress up as Phil Spencer or Lars from Embracer and ask for a treat instead of a trick this year.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, you know what? The honest truth, I have actually only one costume since my kids were born, and it's a Cookie Monster costume that has been around for like 18 years, and it's filthy and gross. It's super, super gross. Anyway, that's the only, I hate Halloween. I fucking hate Halloween. I hate dressing up.
Really?
My wife always forces me. I fucking can't stand it. But looking stupid in a costume like that is fine. All right. Well, it's good to be back. We are clearly, 'tis the season of conferences, right? One after the other. It's like ridiculous. And Mishka's boondoggle adventure will start very soon.
This is, by the way, a problem. Like, I'm having a call with like clients, and they're like, so if I would say I'm busy on like certain day, they're like, oh, is it your jet set life? It's like,
I gave you a shout out 2 weeks ago. I said, you're actually working.
Yes.
Yes.
In all fairness, we did call out, like, you are out there hustling. And yeah. I think what we don't often say about you is not only are you the founder of Deconstructor of Fun, you are chief hustle officer. So you're the one out there getting a lot of gigs for us, working with all the sponsors. And so thank you for that. I will give you a kudos.
Thank you. Next week, I'll be in Abu Dhabi hustling. So
there we go.
Thank you for that.
Go. I'm
not going to post photos because Phil is gonna talk about them. Like, oh my God, private chef, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, don't give me the ammo. There's nothing to shoot, man. I don't want me to tell you.
Yeah. We work with good partners, so they throw in nice events, I have to say.
I have a quick basketball update for those that give a shit. My son's first freshman year season is starting in next week. They played this team called the Reardon Crusaders. They are the number one team in California. They played them over the weekend, and this team is fucking insane. They have like 5 D1 players. They have this kid, and I'm not exaggerating. He is 6'10", 250, okay? He is like imported really from Cameroon, and is Kaminga from the Warriors' cousin, and his best friend from Cameroon came up to go to high school here and play. These kids are huge. So we're in the car. My son's all, Dad, I just don't want to get dunked on. I don't want to get dunked on. Please, I hope I just don't get dunked on, right? And so he gets in after like 3 or 4 minutes after the game starts, and 30 seconds later, he goes to help defense, and he just gets completely dunked over, on. Right? Now, in his defense, he held his ground. He did hold his ground. He didn't get dumped over and get like teabagged, on the way down. No, he actually held his own. But man, it was unbelievable. They just dominated us, right? This team is just insane. So That was his first high school experience, so I'm sure there'll be many more. Also, just wanted to talk about some of these, I was going to say fucking events. I don't know, man. Like sometimes I think there's two types of conferences for gaming. Why? There's the shilling conferences and there is the pontificating conferences, So it's either one or the other, right? So like something like DICE and GamesBeat are like kind of like the OG older guys just talking, and like they're all PR trained. They don't say a fucking thing, right? It's not even that interesting because you don't learn anything. All you do is meet people. But this Games Forum conference is just, it's a constant sales pitch, particularly the ad tech and UA ones. It's like these people cannot provide insights without selling part of their souls, like that's every time I just feel that like, it's just unbelievable. Now I get it. That's the purpose of this event, right? They're trying to sell their wares. I 100% agree. But for me, all I really care about is kind of what's happening in the business. So these people were like at full force at the Games Forum, the AI tools for advertising, rewarded advertising. Dude, this shit was everywhere. How many fucking rewarded advertising companies are there? I mean, they're like coming out of the woodwork. It's basically, rewarded advertising 2.0. And my opinion has not changed here either, by the way. I mean, I think some of them are doing amazing work, but it seems like a good channel, right? But it's not a very deep channel. There's the barrier entries are low. So there's like tons and tons of companies that are coming at it. So, which incentivizes you to pay more and more money to players, which lower margins. So I'm not sure if these will scale and be all that great of a business, but I'm sure there'll be a couple that survive and are good channels. But there were a few bright spots from my experience with Games Forum. I thought Josh Shanley from Wildcard Games, he was dropping knowledge and the F-bombs, which I totally appreciate up there. Warren Woodward from Uptick. He was actually also on Joseph Kim's podcast recently, which I did. Yeah, I would recommend that. I think he's more on the smaller scale of UA, but like really clear and concise. No gaslighting, no bullshit, like about what's going on in the business. Clearly a very smart guy. He also mentioned that he thinks that they will ultimately block fingerprinting, which I thought that was a done deal. That's not happening, but we'll see. But really honest discussion about the UA market. Ad tech and UA folks should take note. I thought the coolest thing from the AI perspective was blackbox.ai. I think Jen was there, right? They were cool, like really cool UA creative tool. The demo looked really compelling, but I don't know much about that business, but I think it's worth looking at.
The idea that was the AI platform that evaluates your ads and the competitor ads, and it automatically generates new creative and tests it. So Blackbox AI or Replay AI, those are the companies that are in that area. And if you're looking to optimize your creative and you're seeing performance results, like that's going to be your next creative solution or those types of partners.
Yeah. And then GamesBeat was this week. I only went to the first day. This is again, like a DICE type event, right? It's primarily console PC folks, not a lot of mobile going on. Far more like senior people here, obviously all PR trained to say fucking nothing for 45 minutes or whatever time slot.
Was there anything useful?
Seriously, dude, I almost lost my goddamn mind. I was listening to this. I swear transmedia was said like 50 times in the first 40 minutes. It's like, gotta be kidding. Amazon woman was up there and some other stuff. It was bad, but like it's OG gaming folk. And it was cool to see some old friends like Bryce Bear, who is the best PR guy out there, as far as I know, and a bunch of other randoms. Oh, Eric Whiteford, who was the coolest motherfucking marketing guy I've ever met and really, really fun to work with. He was at EA. Well, besides Jen Donahoe, of course. Anyway, OG. So it was good. It was good. But it was really well attended and it was really, a really nice venue too in San Francisco.
The GamesBeats events are great. They do the LA one in May. San Francisco was now. And then they're doing another one in LA in December before the Game Awards show, because the Game Awards show films like December 12th or something like that. So I'm going to go to that one. But I love it, Kress, to your point. The value I get out of those is like the networking kind of outside the talks. I'm also conferenced out in that I feel like, number one is I listen to podcasts at 2x speed. And so when people talk in real life, it's really slow. And then, and then the other thing is like, no one's saying anything anymore. And I think that's what people come to us for, and it's what people reach out and they're like, you guys are actually saying things, you have takes, you give away information, and thank you for doing that, because all these other places aren't doing that. So anyway.
We're not in the shill section yet, Jen. Hold your horses.
What? I didn't, what? Was I shilling our, that was just, all right.
Oh, that was the
Jade
segue.
Inferno.
Oh, sorry. That was the segue.
That was the segue. No, I mean, not sorry. That was just like authentic of what people are telling me. All right. So let's shill. The Shooter podcast was great, guys. Phil, Adam.
Credit to Adam for putting it together, initiating it. Really awesome to talk to Devin from Newzoo, who brought some really interesting data since they started tracking MAU from COVID, which just saw a very sharp decline in shooter MAU, a shocking decline. Chris Sides, who was on Marathon. Yeah, 40% decline. It started at COVID. You remember, Newzoo data is looking at, usually tier 1, tier 2 Western markets. Like, there's some things that I think is important to contextualize, but the overall result is still pretty shocking. We also don't have a control group. What was the entire game industry down in terms of players during the same period? Like, there's a little more arm race I think you got to put in this one. But we try to do that on the podcast, which I think was really great. And I think the other thing we really started talking about is like what comes after Battle Royale. What is ultimately going to punch through? Is it extraction shooter? We spend time on that. We spend time on just some generalized FPS stuff. It was a really fun conversation, and I'm already getting a lot of positive feedback. So credit to Adam, Devin, and Chris for coming on. That was a blast. Check it out.
Yeah, definitely look it on Spotify or YouTube, because it was such a nerdy podcast that you guys are just showing like basically a document, and it's like it's a presentation mode.
The line looks steeper in person.
Oh, Devin.
Yeah.
No, my only feedback is that like I didn't really feel like you guys got to concise conclusions at the end. Like, it would have been nice to say like, where are the opportunities, or is it a completely red ocean for multiplayer shooters?
I mean, we talked about large subgenre stuff. I mean, we talked about like large scale shooters as a potential. There's action going on in subgenres. I think there's something there. Fair point.
Like, it seemed like single player shooters, which you guys weren't really discussing, was the only like takeaway of where opportunities might be. Like, yeah, that was my impression anyway from listening to the whole thing. But yeah, you guys did a good job. Yeah, I would say that the 40% decrease is a scary thing, right? Where, like, if it's not a growing market, there are going to be very few opportunities. It's just going to.
They also took Fortnite out of it as well, which was, one of the black hole games of.
That's not growing either, though. As a trend line, that's not been looking great.
Yeah. The one shooter that on mobile that I've been especially looking at has been Garena Free Fire, and how that has collapsed. Like, if you put in those numbers, because that was the biggest, in terms of an audience, it probably was the biggest shooter game. It really collapsed. And there's like different hypotheses. Is it because they released the second SKU because they had the Free Fire, and then they released the Max, and then like those two together are actually much smaller than before? Or is it the COVID hit? Is it the combination of both? Like, hit those, numbers into App Magic or Sensor Tower, whatever you're using, and you'll see a very interesting graph that will generate a lot of different hypotheses. But it will be interesting to hear from Garena what happened.
I talked to Garena, but they did move a lot of people onto alternative platforms purchases.
Okay.
So that kind of offsets some of the weakness. But man, I got in a big discussion with someone about that at the first conference.
Dance Forum?
Like, when I say stuff on this podcast, it's just an opinion, and I'm trying to be as objective as possible. But like, the point is that these fucking off-platform stores are not helping user acquisition. So it's still a fucking leaky bucket. So if a game is doing well on a third-party store, that doesn't mean the game is doing well, right? So like, all these games that are suffering right now because of IDFA, it's like, dude, third-party stores will help your margin. They're not going to help your fucking revenue growth, period. End of sentence. Like, it's just fact, right? Almost, as I say, it's my opinion. But like, anyway.
You've heard of Heroic Labs by now, and we keep talking about them because you need every edge to be successful in today's market. Heroic Labs game stack is built like a brick house. You got the Nakama, their backend game server, Hero, their game development framework, Satori, their live op service, and last but not least, Heroic Cloud to provide massive scalability. Heroic Labs is a battle-tested partner, and their tech enables you to be flexible, creative, and scale for success. Focus on your game, avoid tech risks, grow your product, with scalable live ops and save a big chunk of cheese, all with Heroic Labs. We got a story here coming in about IDFA. We'll get you triggered a little bit later, so it's good. Let's warm you up. I have just a small show for Alex Seropian and Aaron Mariquin. Is this like a Spanish name? Anyways, Alex was the founder of Bungie. The two are, legends of the industry, and they invited me on the podcast, so I wanted to give this shout out just for their podcast, Fourth Curtain. They have a lot of very interesting guests, not me, but the other guests are very, very interesting that are coming in. Most of them are like really senior people in the industry and talk about like developing some of the old games. And they run the show in a very like off the cuff way. There's no questions in advance. They kind of go anywhere they want. I happened to join just after like a food poisoning, and it was a fun little conversation. But I was pretty weak, and then I was like, what the fuck when I was saying these things? But anyways, so
it's a good podcast. And I'm disappointed that you went in half-assed, because they did one with Frank Jabot that was like really fascinating to get, his whole history. And so you're on with like the heavy hitters of the industry, and you showed up like that, dude. What are you doing?
I don't know. You play when it's time to play. You don't take off days. So I promised that I'm going to come in. I was sick. That's fine. We play still. So it is what it is.
All right. I got some fucking corrections from the mocking session. Maybe these are additions, but obviously Phillip could not replicate my dulcet tones of my voice, but his ideas were spot the fuck on. He said exactly what I'm going to say regarding the shutdown of the AAA Team Blue team from Netflix. My take, as I've said many times on this podcast, is that never made any fucking sense for them to build a AAA game. Why would they ever even start a project like that? It does not fit the Netflix platform. I've said it a fucking gazillion times on the podcast, so no surprise on my point. But there's one other thing I want to say, because there are some people talking about upset the fact that these guys lost their jobs, like this amazing 30-person team lost their jobs. It's like unfair, whatever. Netflix made this investment, made this promise, and they didn't deliver. And look, I totally agree. Everyone's job loss is fucking tragic. I absolutely have no love for these big tech companies fucking around with game developers, right? Having said that, these folks did a deal with the devil, right? They knew what they were getting themselves into, and any objective person would have said that this doesn't even make any sense for Netflix, right? And on top of that, these guys were getting like $600,000 fucking salaries or more, probably $1 million salaries for 2 or 3 years. For projects that clearly never made any fucking sense, right? They should have known better, right? They should have known better and set their expectations accordingly. And I am absolutely certain that these folks will be fine. This team was actually 100% amazing, right? In terms of like the quality of the team. So they'll be good. They're all good, right? But you did a deal with the devil and you got burnt. That's what I would say, if you ask me. But now they'll move on to something else. They got to figure out what to do next, right? This is like, 2.0 of Netflix games. Speaking of 2.0, Apple is working on a new Apple App Store dedicated to games. And this is a rumor from 9to5Mac, so it was not confirmed, or no details were provided at all. So it's like really hard to know. But on the surface, this sounds like a positive, right? Potentially a way for actually you to gain discovery and gain organics and have something dedicated to gaming, that I think, as you mentioned last week, I don't know if you mocked me on this one, is like, this is the shit they should have done like 12 fucking years ago, right? Like to justify this 30%, right? They should have been building out these tools and technologies to help game publishers back then. I think Google actually tried it and failed miserably back then as well. But it's fucking too late for this, right? Really, it's fucking too late. I mean, at the end of the day. But the thing is that bugs me about this is that knowing Apple, the way I know Apple, or that we all know Apple, they're fucking up to something, dude. They are fucking up to something, right? This is not for the best interest of publishers. This is just not, right? They have constantly screwed over publishers time and time again, from requirements like Metal way back in the day, the redesign of the App Store in 2016, of course, IDFA, my gut tells me that literally they are up to something, right? This is not going to end well. So here's what I think. This is all complete bullshit speculation, by the way, just to be clear, right? One, they may be trying to placate authorities, right? To show that they're providing services towards games to justify the 30% bullshit. So it's some kind of thing regarding the legal things that they're admired in across the world and trying to placate those fucking people, right? Two, they're trying to, this is even the worst, this conspiracy theory 101, right? They're trying to separate games from apps, right? In some way. So they can justify the 30% for games and maybe reduce the fee for apps, right? So maybe that will help kind of eliminate some of like the legal issues that they're having brought more broadly, right? Across the ecosystem. And then also the third thing is they're trying another way to fuck over Facebook and AppLovin and all these other UA channels, right? Because that was the whole point of IDFA to begin with, right? Is to screw over and get more control over the store. And they've completely lost it again, right? Because fingerprinting has replaced IDFA and now everyone's like driving more and more traffic to the store. So by some using like some separate store function or whatever, maybe they'll be with the block fingerprinting or force using scan, something crazy, right? Or sell more advertising for Apple, right? What I do know is that they do not have gaming's interests at heart, right? I talked to dozens of people during the last 3 weeks at these conferences, and not one person knew anything about this shit, right? That can't be good, right? If they're not actually trying to bring publishers into the fold to discuss how this new thing, focus on gaming, is going to benefit them, they're up to no fucking good. They're up to no good. So we'll see if anything happens here. We'll see what it matters, but it can't be good. That's all I got to say.
They're going to have to keep making changes, you're right, because I imagine, by the way, the Epic Google deal, that one's on hold. Google has to open up the Google Play Store. So all of that, Google appealed. It was supposed to go into effect November 1st. So as expected, that's on hold. But I would imagine Apple is still looking out to say, like if that is going forward, there might be blowback on us. We continue to need to make changes and evolve. Maybe that's what's going on, to your point.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
All right. So moving on, the Switch 2. So we're going to continue with rumors. The Switch 2 may be announced this week as a established Nintendo insider who is a Brazilian journalist who has scoops all the time, saw some chatter that they might announce the Switch 2 before the earnings call, which is on November 5th. And they're looking to do that to get ahead of the news coming out of it, that people are going to want to understand when that's coming. So Nintendo has only announced that they will announce the Switch successor before the end of their fiscal, which is March 31st. So by the way, I don't know if we clued into this, but their commitment was they're going to announce it, not that they were going to launch it. And so have we kind of parsed that apart before? Or did we think that it was like coming in spring of next year?
No, it's coming September, October next year. I mean, that's my source. So generally when they do this kind of preemptive announcement on a hardware thing, that means that things are not looking good on the earnings side, right? So like they want people to get excited about something. Honestly, they should not be announcing the Switch until early next year, when it's launching, because they don't want to torpedo sales of the existing Switch during holiday, which is their big selling season, right? Because people will anticipate them coming out. So this could mean that something does not look good in their next earnings report if they're trying to do this right before it, right? That's generally what this means, but it could be wrong, and they could not be. It's possible they won't even announce anything. But I'm looking forward to the announcement. I think everyone's pretty excited about it from who I talked to. So we will see.
Yeah, no, I think this is going to be one of the key things to help the industry in the back half of next year. For console and hardcore gamers, it's GTA 6. For kids and families, it's Switch 2.
Problem, it only helps the Nintendo, right? It doesn't help anybody else but Nintendo. Right?
Correct.
But it is good for the industry.
All right. So our next story is from an App Charge report. They did a thorough analysis of top grossing charts and found that on average, Kress, you're going to love this, 72% of top grossing games operate web shops or web stores. So they have researched and tracked which of the games have web stores. Many were not easy to find, and often publishers only invite a select group of VIP players. All of the top 20 grossing social casino games have web stores. I mean, we should not be shocked by this. So huge games in H1 2024, direct to consumer revenue accounted for 10% of total revenue, up from 4.2% a year prior, exceeding their expectations. Phil, I think you pulled some of this information. Was this
Yes.
shocking to you?
No, I think this affirms what we've known, which is, and I think this is the interesting piece, is the genre level differences. So casual match was like 30% web store adoption, where social casino, Forex, much higher. And this goes back to the theory that web store adoption is directly tied to the returns to having discounted spend. So if you're in a Forex game, remember your return per dollar of spend is higher. If you go to the web shop, you're getting more hard currency or usually more power per unit of spend. And so there's a competitive advantage to spending. And I would argue it's something very similar in social casino. You're seeing the same effect that's driving high adoption in social casino. And I think that the bigger component in social casino, however, is that when you just spend a lot of money, just, a small percentage effect has a large nominal value. So if you have, like for instance, if you went onto like EA subscription platform, if I bought a lot of games, I wouldn't have to buy a lot of games anymore because I'd be on the platform. And so when you have these really high LTVs, even just like a 10% extra bang for your buck goes a really long way. So I'm not surprised. I really do wonder if there are genre limits to each of the web store adoptions, but at least this is one data point suggesting that may be the case. I don't even know if casual games can get higher. Can they get to 80%? I find it really hard to jig those things together.
This makes sense. You're maintaining margin. You're basically taking a game that's been successful and you are just basically sucking more margin out of it, and could be making it more profitable in theory, I guess, on a percentage basis. But overall, this doesn't solve your UA problem.
All right, moving on to an update from Roblox. So they have bolstered their child safety measures. So changes include kids aged 13 and under having to have parental permission to use the game's chat features. Those 9 and under need to get permission to play games that have moderate violence or crude humor, which is pretty much every game on Roblox, but that's fine. It also is introducing parental accounts that oversee what kids are up to on the platform. So this is likely in response to the Hindenburg article, right, Kress?
Yeah, I mean, most certainly. Like, these probably activities they were doing already, right? So they're just showcasing them on PR just to make people think that they're doing something.
No, this is PR 101, right? This is crisis comms 101, is how do we get ahead of any big regulatory action that might be coming to get us? And, so, I mean, I feel bad for them because they're in this endless game of like internet creeper whack-a-mole where they're just trying to constantly do things to keep down the naughty folks on these platforms. I was actually talking to some folks and they're like, Jen, you wouldn't believe it is like this constant stream of just how do you keep 9 million kids from talking about penis this whole day on the show. Like that's what, it's like we have to make these tools that do these things. It's awful. But Kress, when you talked about it last week, you were really astute to say that investors have factored in all of these things to the share price. Like they know that there are alt accounts and there are bots. They know that there are internet creepers that are doing naughty things, but their trust and safety team has been at it and going at this and trying to fix this for a long time. And so this might be the only Hindenburg hit piece that didn't actually land a hit because their stock, it went down for a minute and then came right back up and it doesn't seem to have changed.
These guys don't give up. This is just phase 1, right? There's probably phase 2 and phase 3 of hit pieces against Roblox. And I think they have other things they could go after pretty easily, honestly. But misrepresentation of the data, I think they will continue to pound. And I think if they looked at the monetization, the egregious, aggressive monetization geared towards kids, I think that's like a winner too. So I think if they go after that kind of thing, they're not going to give up. It's not just a one hit and they're done. They keep coming after them. So I think they're invested, but maybe they will lose this one. Maybe to your point that the shareholders already know these risks and are willing to take it. Because yeah, you're right. The stock hasn't moved all that much.
I've been following Roblox for a little bit, just from like a business perspective. I tried to play it, but it was too difficult. Like not too difficult, but just too enduring to play these games. It was not for me. But just looking at the performance of the business, I forgot what was the number, but they practically spend no money on marketing, like zero. And when you look at their growth curves, like you put it in like the downloads and revenue on mobile, it's just shooting up. So, and I kind of did some graphs through it and was looking like between 2022 towards the end of 24, every single country except one had triple digit growth at least, both in revenue and downloads. And that one was Turkey that banned Roblox like last month.
Yeah.
But like you name it, every country is growing. So it's the most insane business that you could see. And trying to, like, there are a lot of UGC platforms that are, of course, being pitched and being built and this and that. But I look at these numbers, I'm like, they're growing like crazy. They have insane social graph. The revenue is booming, their downloads are booming, and they're not spending on marketing. How are you going to challenge this company?
They spend a little bit, but you're right. They don't spend a lot because you kind of can't. And the culture of the company too is very engineering product led. And there's not that many folks marketing. And you don't really need to when you build in all of these great social features, right? And that's what they're doubling down on when you look at where they're investing their time for creators. A lot of it's on social features.
It's in their yearly report of 23. It says Roblox Corporation spent approximately $38.6 million on advertising. That's insanely low. That's like a mid-tier merge game, like top, maybe 10th.
Yeah. As a percentage of revenue, like insanely. Yeah. And then the other thing to look at too is like how much of that is on developer marketing versus consumer or player marketing. That's the other interesting piece.
Insane.
All right, Mishka, you have some stories.
All right, investments, divestments, M&A. So I'll start with triggering Kress by a press release from Anti-Hero Studios. So they recently secured an undisclosed sum in pre-seed funding. So pre-seed meaning they have the team, they get the first money in. The team has actually been set up 6 months ago. So now they found their investors. It seems like there was a little bit of a break between when they got the investment and when they started. So they started earlier. This team is comprised of former Supercell employees, solid group. I can't say anything about that. And they are basically, according to them, creating games worth sharing. And their strategy is to do marketing that makes the games word of mouth worthy and memorable in big ways. And so I took a couple of quotes from the article by their CEO, Bryce Laville, St. Martin. Oh, it's a beautiful name. So quote number 1, I believe IDFA is a positive turn for the industry as a whole because it forces game developers to refocus on creating games that are worth people's time and attention. And there was like a lot of conversation in DOF Slack, and one person commented on this. Gouging both your eyes out is a positive turn because it forces you to sharpen your other senses, possibly leading to heightened sense of smell.
It's a good one.
I had to, but I'm not going to name who said, but it was on the Slack.
That's a good one.
I thought it's so funny. Then other quotes are, players do not want to engage with games that are not worth playing or remembering.
Yeah, no shit.
That's, yes, true. And then the third one, there's plenty, but I believe brand strategy is blue ocean in mobile gaming, but only a few teams will be able to take advantage of it. And Anti-Hero will be the first and most important one. And then, of course, they go on explaining that they will use user acquisition, the traditional methods, but they don't want to rely on it. So I did invite the CEO directly on the podcast because I think this is such a positive news in a negative take on IDFA. And it's like an anti-Kress take on IDFA. And I was like, come on in, let's have a little bit of a conversation. And I think also Supercell did not invest into the team. And I don't know if it's because Supercell decided not to invest per se in this team, but I think also that Supercell might be done with these pre-seed investments because they have this new CFO. They're becoming a big company. There's no more time to give $500,000 to a team. It's such a distraction when you're building, a multi-billion-dollar business. So I think I almost took it as a positive sign that they're not spreading these mini tickets around and hopefully focusing on big acquisitions coming in the future with that new CFO and new strategy. So that's what I took out of it. I didn't take it that Supercell didn't trust them. So anyway, what do you think,
They
Kress?
normally invest in all of their ex-employees?
Yeah. Supercell normally invest, they have such an insanely broad portfolio of small teams that it seems really weird. It's almost like they're a VC fund, like an early investor. And again, it's great that they're spreading seeds around and helping these companies. But in fact, Supercell is not the type of an organization that has resources to spare. They can't say you're a lead designer in Brawl Stars. Why don't you help the team of 5 over there to, figure some system out. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense for them to waste time on teams that have left the company. Like, fuck that. Fuck off.
Well, no,
right?
That's quite typical for Riot, for example, invest quite often to people who leave. But I've heard things even like when they have, of course, offsites with their teams where they bring them together. And, I've heard that sometimes like even the Supercell employees don't come to these offsites that are for the investee teams, like where all the marketers are meeting and so forth, because they're just so freaking busy building this amazing company. And that's, they don't have time to share. So that's what I've heard. But anyways, I think it's a good sign that they are not investing. If they're not, if they are, that's also a good sign.
The whole thesis here is that you need to build social games that delight the consumer and that are worth sharing, right? That's his thesis, right? Which this will circumvent the current UA arbitrage distribution system that's solely focused on games that make shit tons of money that can afford UA, right? But this guy clearly doesn't understand the current mobile landscape at all, right? I mean, like, honestly, this is like the institutionalized by Supercell type thing, or Riot or Blizzard, that you can go out and just make a game that's amazing and beautiful and wonderful and that people will come type notion, right? You only can do that if you're fucking Supercell, right? I mean, because Supercell is Supercell. That's why all these games get so many downloads, right? And they fail so miserably when they don't work, right, at Supercell. So I understand his sentiment, right? But this is not the business of mobile gaming. It's just not, right? I mean, IDFA certainly didn't make things better. It made things a shit ton worse, right? So the cost of bringing games to market has gone up. Like, there's no doubt about that, right? So monetization has gone up to account for it. And that means even less creative and social experiences that work in this market, right? And if you look at the top games since IDFA, they're all monetizing at insane levels, right? So Monopoly Go at $22 RPI in the West, Whiteout Survival, Last War, Diablo Immortal, Honkai Star Rail, even fucking Triple Dot, $13 to $15, $19 RPI range, right? That's the only games that have been able to scale in the last few years. So, and I would argue that the only thing really creative about these games, this is going to be controversial, particularly the like Whiteout Survival and Last War, is these fucking casual shit that they're getting people to bring into these games, right? So they're just actually adding this casual layer to fucking bamboozle people to get into the game. Maybe Diablo Immortal fits his thesis. I mean, it is kind of casual, but the end game is egregious, aggressive monetization that's geared towards the only smallest of smallest hardcore users. And I don't even know if it really has that many social features as in some of the other games. So yeah, I don't know. Actually, none of these games are very particularly social, right? Not by his definition anyway. Maybe not Monopoly Go with his revenge mechanic, but does that fit his sensibilities of social? I don't know. I don't think so, but maybe. But anyway, I do agree his idea of creating social games is a good way of building out organics. I mean, it's possible, right? But the games won't survive unless it has deep monetization. If you can't scale using UA, you're fucking fucked. Okay. I mean, just let's be real here, right? That ship sailed even before IDFA apocalypse, right? Like, you couldn't scale a game unless it had good monetization back then. So, Phillip Black, any comments from the monetization expert?
Yeah, Phil.
I don't really know what he means by brand strategy here. I'd like to interrogate that, because does he really mean brand strategy? Like, is he going to go off and run TV ads, or does he really mean IP here? Is he just going to build strong IP? Because that's what I think he really wants to say. And I don't know. I just saw Squad Busters go out and fail with an IP thesis, like just completely fall on its face. It has supposed to have all of Supercell's IP. Like, the Barbarian is supposed to be the most recognizable IP element in mobile gaming, and it couldn't drive a shit ton of downloads. Not only that, that's something that it's an outcome of having a successful game. It's not what gave it a successful game to begin with. It's iconic as a result of being a success. I think causation goes in the opposite arrow. So I think there's just questions for him. I mean, it's just a press release. I'd love to understand more, but what does he mean by brand? What actually does this translate in terms of a concrete strategy? But this is a response to that, Eric, though. I think you have to at least give him credit. This is a response to what you're saying in terms of IDFA. Like, paid performance marketing is not going to get easier, is what you keep echoing on this podcast, and I agree with you. This is a counter thesis. Maybe we should try this direction.
Yeah. I hope he's right to some degree, but like, nothing in the market has proven out his thesis, period.
Well, I mean, he was just talking about Roblox. I mean, that's one example. I think Stumble Guys is another interesting one.
But that was the one that I did think about. Stumble Guys was actually a really good good, but that didn't monetize at all, right? Like that was just
It monetized on ads, and they're
but it's
improving
a
that
social
right now.
phenomenon, but it doesn't monetize. You can't spend UA against something like that, right?
No, you can't. And I think that's one of the things that you lose when you, again, I don't really love the brand performance dichotomy, but like when it comes to paid UA, it's very easy to insert $1 and get $1 out. It's a machine. It's a machine that you can really choose how often you want to press and how hard you want to press. And I don't think brand has the amount of fine tuning in that relationship. So again, to your point, Eric, like it's hard to scale these things. Like if paybacks are good, insert more money, until paybacks are not good.
Right.
Brand, it's not the same.
Yeah. And if you look at the top 100 games, they're all pay to win. They all have high monetization. They're high monetization. They can be spent against, right? And so it's like, I don't even know if there's an example of one of his games that would be in the top 100, right? Of a game that's social in nature and that brand is driving user acquisition, like organics. I mean, how many people are going to complain about organics, right? Like, it's like there is no fucking organics anymore. Maybe the new game app store from Apple is going to solve all our fucking problems, right? We're going to have organics of the yin yang, like, hey, let's do this, right? Fuck you. That's not happening. It's not happening. Seriously.
Yeah.
Let's get real.
I find it interesting. It's kind of like the Riot scenario or Blizzard, where we had people who left Blizzard only to set up like a mini Blizzard next in Irvine. And we had like people leaving Riot only to build a MOBA like in LA. And you're like, excuse me. And then in this case, it kind of came to my mind, like you're leaving Supercell to build Supercell. Right.
By the
like
way, on a buy and buy, like I can't believe after all this bullshit and trash talking I've said about MOBAs over the years, right? One data point was missing from my entire analysis on why MOBAs don't work in the West, both PC, console, and mobile for that matter, is that I heard specifically that Riot's game League of Legends only has 2% or 3% of its revenue coming from North America, right? 2 or 3%, dude. That is fucking mice nuts, dude. No wonder none of these games are successful in the West. If that's really all that Riot is driving revenue from that game, the biggest game on the planet for MOBAs, dude, that is completely fucking bullshit, right? Like there is no market for MOBAs in the West if that's the case, right? I mean, that's nuts. I can't believe I didn't know this all this time after talking so much shit, right? But I got.
You're talking about Wild Rift, right?
No. League.
No, regular
PC.
fucking
the HD PC franchise is 3% from the no
3%.
fucking way. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. There's no way that can be.
I heard it from 3 different people. I can't believe it, right? Fucking Riot people, come out and tell me that I'm wrong on this one, right?
Well, we got Jen, just
You're not wrong.
do a sign.
No, listen.
What the fuck? What the? Why are you even based in Santa Monica then? That's the wrong place to be.
There's a lot to unpack. I think we can all agree that China and Korea are the massive amounts of revenue that drive that game. The reason why it's in Santa Monica is obviously that's where it started, but for some reason, this is why League is a unicorn and Riot is a unicorn, is the Western sensibility to make that game that happens to resonate in the East is like one of the only games where that works, right? Because we always talk about how Eastern games are made for the Eastern audience and Western games are made for the Western. But for some reason, the Western influence on a MOBA that is successful in the East is what is a secret sauce for that. And yeah, the Western part of the business for League of Legends is not nearly what it is in especially China and Korea, which are the dominant markets.
Again, like I did not know this. I mean, I obviously knew China and Korea were huge, but not I thought for some reason it was a lot bigger in the West. And no wonder like esports didn't work out in the West also, right?
There's still a lot of people because the game is so huge. But yes, from a relative sense, there's like enough success in those little bit of esport pockets for it to make sense, but they are declining and they can't run it profitably is the problem.
This changes so much. Like if this is a true fact, then like this recontextualizes like the Sparkball MOBA. I don't know if you've seen that. The one's been floating around as a thesis that's been around for a while. The Space Odyssey one that came out recently, they had the soccer element. There's Supervive coming out. We've talked about that a little bit, which is from the League of Legends team. If you're telling me that like 97% of revenue, I don't know, can we say it's from China? I guess Japan might be part of this too. Korea
and China, yeah, and SEA, yeah.
I mean, that completely would change my approach to developing those games if I knew that fact. I mean, I would do all my communications. Why are you communicating in English? Like, that's your first mistake.
Don't make a fucking MOBA. Dude, don't ever make a MOBA. Like, what am I even saying? Stop making MOBAs. If you're making a MOBA now, just stop. Stop and do something else, right? It's crazy. It's so nuts. Anyway, all right, let's move on.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
The creative studios team from Destiny maker Bungie is moving under the PlayStation Studios umbrella. This move will form the foundation for Sony Interactive Entertainment's live service. Oh my God. Is this from like 3 years ago? What am I reading here? Did you put this in, Phil?
What did I say? What did I say? The minute that Bungie starts reporting to Sony brass, the fucking game is over, dude. The gig is up. Like, it is over for Bungie. Like, there's no way that Bungie survives this, right? Like, Sony Interactive Entertainment, the bastion of excellence for live services, like, this is fucked. Absolutely fucked. This is not good news. Not good news at all. Thank you very much. And I said this months and months, and once the acquisition happened, I knew this was going to happen. This is not good news. Not at all. Sorry.
So what they did say that was good for them is Marathon. I don't even know. So they had an announcement, I think probably to counteract this announcement, that Marathon is going to have both PvE and PvP elements. And its development has seen aggressive changes based on the feedback from playtesters and content creators. The next update for Marathon is expected mid-2025 with a possible release window of 26.
It's just 2 years too late.
Look over here.
Oh my God, dude. The fact that it's too early to show, you can't show a fucking video, like of gameplay or anything. Come on, man.
Chris Sides was director of product on Marathon, so you should definitely go listen to it. And Adam Telfer was involved as well.
Yeah.
Product guy, though.
Product guy.
Different Adam. Sorry, go ahead.
All right. Sony is shutting down Firewalk Studios, the maker of the recent shooter Concord, and Neon Koi, which is a mobile FPS game that is unreleased. RIP to those two studios.
This is Mishka's old studio, just to be clear. So we're not going to comment on this one for obvious reasons.
His studio died with Savage Games. This is a new. What are you talking about?
Oh yeah, this is a new
place.
This is the Phoenix from the ashes.
None of these news are fun when people are getting laid off, and this is among them. Of course, do contact me, DM. I had a lot of developers reach out, and I think 38 people are looking for a job at the moment in Berlin and in Helsinki. Very talented programmers, artists, and designers. Very good expertise. So I have the lists. I've been helping out, been sending them to relevant studios that are making action games for sure.
Also, some sad news potentially. I was reading about this. As with most companies in China, it's difficult to tell what's going on. Tencent admits key changes at the top of the company, but rebuffs layoff and restructuring reports from GameIndustry.biz. So if anyone has any insights, we'd love to hear more. It sounded like they were doing some consolidations, but maybe not. So anyone with rumors? Have you guys heard anything?
I got nothing. I can't believe I have nothing on this one, but I'll ask around and see what's happening. But you have to keep in mind, the one thing I do know and I heard about was that Teamy really has had one success this entire time, right? It's been Call of Duty Mobile. Everything else has been kind of a train wreck. So it's like,
really?
I think they do fight for the golden spatula, which is TFT in China, which crushes it.
No. I'm sorry, in the West.
Oh, in the West.
The Western teams of Teamy. Sorry.
Got it.
So it's like they haven't been firing in all cylinders. But anyway, if anyone has any intel, let us know. I'd be interested to know what's really happening.
Was it the Lightspeed was the other Tencent studio, right?
LA.
Yeah, because they set up an LA office, right? Am I correct with that? Yeah, okay.
Step into the future of game monetization with Xsolla, the premier partner for game developers seeking to expand their reach and revenue. Xsolla provides a robust suite of tools designed to enhance user acquisition, manage subscriptions, and streamline payment solutions worldwide. Unlock new markets and maximize profitability through their customized, secure payment architecture and dedicated support team. Xsola, powering game developers to achieve global success.
This podcast is brought to you by AppsFlyer. In today's digital world, understanding your app's journey from discovery to download is more than just insightful, it's essential. Enter AppsFlyer, the leader in mobile attribution and marketing analytics that allows you to measure the full potential of your marketing efforts, making every ad dollar work smarter. With AppsFlyer, that's your new reality. Dive deep into data-driven insights that reveal exactly where your users come from and how they'll interact with your app. AppsFlyer, where your app's potential meets performance.
All right, games. Phil.
Yes, we have news that the shooter Strine Nova has hit 400,000 Steam wish lists. They also have a separate pre-registration campaign on their website, which is at 3.8 million. The reason I highlight this is because I think the A16Z crowd must be foaming at the mouth. This is a waifu third-person shooter on Steam that you can wishlist. This is a thesis that I think everyone's just kicking themselves that they didn't go after fast enough. But you play as anime girl characters in a third-person shooter, and they have a mechanic where you can become almost like a 2D figure to dodge bullets. It's from iDream Sky. It's a Chinese company. They, of course, have Tencent money. They were listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. They mostly have been publishing Western games in China, and this is one of their first original releases, although they have one or two others recently. And it is already showing a strong interest of demand. We were just talking about PvP shooters on that panel. I'm keen to see how this one plays out. I think a lot of people are kicking themselves that they didn't tackle this thesis quicker of going with a waifu shooter game.
How different is this from Nikai, like art style?
It's not as aggressive in certain elements, I would argue.
In certain elements. Got it.
It's much more moderate.
So it's not as sexualized, right?
I would argue this could probably hit a relatively stronger female split in terms of
makes
appeal,
sense.
potentially.
Yeah, Nikai is Korean, right?
Japanese.
Okay.
Also, we have some news that today CCP Games has launched EVE Galaxy Quest. It is a Forex title developed by CCP's Shanghai studio. Just on a note, as we're talking a lot about Chinese developers and Forex, Age of Empires, which we were talking about last week, is already up to 3.5 million cumulative downloads. Last time we talked about it was 1 million. So it's had a huge launch. Of course, the slope is really steep and downward sloping, so I would assume that there's a lot of brand marketing spend here. But I think it goes back to something Joseph Kim mentioned on his podcast a couple months ago when he was talking about Tencent, that sometimes Chinese developers find that there's this right half of the CPI curve where you spend so much money that CPIs actually tend to decrease. And I sometimes wonder if Tencent is playing a similar strategy when it comes to some of their game launches. But we're seeing a lot of activity with Forex and with China. And I would remember there's a Command and Conquer one that I think has been announced too. So they're kind of going through this like very strange IP graveyard for Forex ideas.
Yeah, this kind of was a blast from the past for me because I remember like back in 2018, I was working at Rovio and we acquired PlayRaven, which is a Helsinki-based studio, and they were making a 4X game for CCP. And that was kind of like, not the reason for acquisition, but the engine that they built around that. But I was looking through this CCP 4X game, and I believe this is a blockchain game, right?
Oh, I don't think this is the blockchain one. No, this isn't the blockchain one. This is mobile.
Are you sure?
Fairly confident.
Okay, because that was
Maybe
Awakening,
I'll shoot a
right?
correction next week.
Right, because there was this Awakening, and they raised $40 million.
No, this is 4X.
But the Awakening was also 4X, but it also had like a blockchain side of it because it was the only blockchain game that to me made sense because you're harvesting and you're going to sell it and you're the space exploration stuff. Anyways, so let's see next week, maybe in corrections, maybe not.
Sounds good. One update from, I would argue, is probably, you could consider it the top story over the last year, the second top story. I think Monopoly Go is in there, but Dungeon Fighter Online, and has actually started to slow down in terms of revenue when we look at Sensor Tower numbers. But just to give you context, so far it has $88 revenue per download. That is not a mispronunciation. $88 revenue per download. And I'm looking at iOS only just to control for our normal China store quagmire where we don't get Android tracking for a good portion of the downloads. It's only done 7.5 million downloads according to Sensor Tower, which I was shocked by. So part of this is just a large amount of spend on a very small base. And again, it is a large amount of spend. And if you just look at iOS, it's done $700 million, $700 million in 6 months. And what I was really just surprised to learn is how quickly it started to flatten. So the cumulative revenue is impressive, but when we look at downloads and we comp it against, let's say, Honor of Kings, it's not even close when it comes to volume. I mean, we're talking about, on a weekly basis, certainly under 100,000 downloads, which is, I don't know. Is this something that's sustainable, Eric? Like, I was just surprised to see this, in my opinion, look like it's sputtering a little bit this quickly after launch.
I mean, it's number one, number two on the App Store, so it's kind of hard for them to predict what it's actually doing. You know what I mean? So, I have tried to bring it up, but I mean, it's coming down a bit.
It just, it's hard to fault it, just like Monopoly Go.
There are a lot of new games coming out in China, right? There's been a lot more approvals, and so maybe there's more competition, like going after the same audience. Because again, this game is not one of those like typical like shark fin type games, right? This is a game that lasts forever. I mean, as it has on PC, so maybe they're just kind of losing incremental players to others.
Wasn't Squad Busters approved for China? Is that going to save it?
Yeah, that'll do it. Game that makes no money. Yeah, perfect.
All right. So here's a topic I wanted to talk about. I saw that Rollick, who is part of Zynga, so they soft launched a Barbie game. And so we finally get to see, I don't know if you all remember, but this a while back when this announcement came out around the time of the Barbie movie, it was, hey, Zynga's going to do kind of an older targeted merge game. And we're going to see if that audience kind of works. And so it's now live in the UK. Laura played it and sent me a video. So basically it's Travel Town meets the Barbie IP. So when you think about it too, it's also a little bit like that decorative feature with a little bit of story, with a little bit of merge. And so here's the challenge for them is when they greenlit this deal, it was on the heat of the movie, but they don't have the movie rights. So they don't have Margot Robbie. They don't have live action. They just have like traditional toy rights. And this category and the genre targets an older female audience. So part of what the magic of the movie was the nostalgia that brought back all of these women who really loved the IP and loved the idea and the message of the Barbie movie. And so they were like, oh, okay, like let's figure out how to do that. However, when you see the visuals that are, if you're watching, you can see some of the visuals. The visuals are really what you would target and use if you're going after the younger audience or the younger girl audience. And to say something really boomer, danger, Will Robinson, I think they have a complete IP creative mismatch for what they are trying to do with this audience. And they're losing the magic of the idea that I think they thought they had, which is how do you go and be nostalgic and grab older women who remember this brand with a play pattern and a game genre that monetizes really well with an older female audience. What's also crazy, and I don't know the details behind this, maybe it's a UK thing, the game is listed as an age rating of 17 plus. I think they're using ad monetization, and maybe that's why they did that. Although when I look at Travel Town and other games, they're in the US store, they're not rated that way. So I don't know how you have like a young child's IP and you're like, oh, but it's 17 plus. The brand has a ton of potential. If somebody had asked me, I would have done like a 50s mid-century OG Barbie look and style. Like actually that was part of the opening of the movie and really positioned it towards that audience. And, like we're not your daughter's Barbie game, but when you see this in the App Store, I don't know what older woman's going to be like, ooh, this is for me, because it just doesn't look like that. So again, this goes to what I said at the beginning of the show is if anyone is looking to bring a toy IP into video games and especially targeting a different audience, please call me. I can help you. I've worked on all of these things. I'm just really sad. Oh, so I just wanted to compare what this is versus some other platforms. So there's a mobile game that does really well, and then there's Roblox experience. So on mobile, Barbie Dreamhouse Adventures does, about 900,000 downloads and $1 million over the last 30 days. The Barbie Dreamhouse Tycoon inside of Roblox is the number 3 branded game with 18.8 million monthly visits. Just absolutely insane. When you compare lifetime to lifetime, the mobile game for Dreamhouse has been out for 6 years, 138 million downloads. On Roblox, 300 plus million visits in about 1 year. So in 1 year, Barbie on Roblox is like 2x that of the best Barbie game over the last 6 years. Time spent per session on mobile is 7 minutes. Roblox is double that at 14 minutes. And congrats to GameFam. You know, Joe is a huge fan of the show and often on our podcast. So they're the one who does the Barbie Roblox game. It's just super crazy to think about how the Roblox, again, to our earlier conversation, how Roblox can really own and drive that younger audience. The opportunity here was really to go after an older audience. And I just don't think they did that with the creative. So,
Jen, that was a brilliant analysis. That was a brilliant analysis. I can't even
really,
I can't even add anything to that, Jen. The only thing I'll just add data points to what you've already said when it comes to the male split, female split, and also the average age from Sensor Tower. They have a lot of really powerful features on the platform. We look at Royal Match, Candy Crush, and Gardenscapes, and I didn't look at merch, unfortunately, and I do wonder if that skews a little bit younger. But 64% female, 68% female, 73% female. Wow. So it's everything that we knew. It's just great to see another data point supporting it. When it comes to average age, now this is what really hit home. Royal Match, Candy Crush, Gardenscapes, 41, 39, 39. Oof. So it is exactly the demo we've been imagining forever. It's the same Yahtzee demo, as I'm sure you remember, Jen. I mean, that's what got Dice with Ellen across the line. Rest in peace. And so it's just great to see the data says the same thing. And I would also point out this is the same problem they had with My Little Pony. When they tried to do that IP, they didn't make it for the Pony Bros, whatever they call them.
The bronies.
Like they didn't even do anything for the bronies. There wasn't any wink wink. And especially with Barbie, you know, a lot of the Barbie movie was about all the different versions of Barbie throughout the years. You know, they had like, you know, one arm, I think they had pregnant Barbie, but it was weird. Like imagine you could collect those. There's just something here that really makes sense. And it was astonishing when you brought up those numbers, Jen, in terms of Dreamhouse Adventures. Yeah. You know, pulling in around 300 million downloads. And for people who aren't familiar, and Eric, I think you've looked into this. This is by Budge, which is they kind of do kids games. They're sharewary. So it's kind of like, okay, there's a section of the game you can't access. You pay $5, you get in. Dreamhouse is one of the ones where they started to introduce more free-to-play mechanics. They do have a hard currency. So it's the only one that they've started to move in terms of monetization. So it's interesting that both downloads are up when it's monetizing higher, although I assume they're out doing paid stuff.
They have a subscription.
They have that too, which I think is very interesting. You know, only 60-cent revenue per download, but the other Budge games are far worse. But I agree.
Well, mobile was only about 140 downloads. The 300 million was Roblox.
Yeah, it's a vanity metric.
I understand. I mean, listen, we have what we're working with. And with the Sensor Tower and data AI numbers on age and demo, please take that with a grain of salt because of IDFA deprecation and things like that. But I would say everything we have in consumer insights that I have seen, especially after working on farm building games like this, is what it is, right? Like a 40 plus woman who is the audience skewing towards female. Although, you know, I think if Laura were here, she would say that a lot of the puzzle games are a little bit more 50-50 these days. But Barbie is not going to attract a male audience. Let's just be super clear about that.
How does it work with an IP rights? Because you have the movie rights and then you have the Mattel, like the toy.
The brand.
Yeah. And so you would have to get both in order to do. So when the deal is done with Mattel, then they only can give you the toy. And that's why it looks so childish. And they would have had it done with like whoever published that, Paramount or some other one.
Yeah, but they can choose to do more of an adult themed, you know, aesthetic if they chose to. They don't have to use the movie assets to do that.
Correct.
And Mattel would have said yes to that, or like, well, how does this work? Like it's a corporation when you have such a strong brand holder, and they're like, no, we actually wanted to make it like toys because we also want to sell toys.
We can send them the comments that you made about Monopoly Go and Scopely. Give your person who licensed your IP more flexibility to go out and fucking execute. This is your message. Control C, Control V.
So they could have done whatever they wanted, right? And so if I were them, I would have come up with 3 or 4 different creative concepts and tested those with players beforehand and said, hey, we want to do these. And maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe they did. And they found that this worked. My spidey sense says no. And by the way, they don't need the movie. And I don't think they should have used Margot Robbie inside of the game. It would have been limiting. It would have been felt outdated. And so I think the right approach, like I said, would have been to go after the library of creative that has existed for that brand for over 50 years and gone back into the archives and pulled out and done like a nostalgic play. But, you know, it is what it is, and we'll see. We'll keep an eye on their numbers. I'll send you the video, the gameplay, but it's like, a lot of these games are cartoony, and so perhaps that's what they were like. Oh, look at Love and Pies and Travel Town and Gossip Harbor, and it's cartoony and these things. And by doing that, though, it looks like a kid's game.
Well, back to a game that actually does attract a male audience, so we can finish this podcast. Call of Duty 6 release, the biggest game of the year. Absolutely massive. And reviews are in. They're relatively positive, like 84, 85, somewhere around there.
Really? On Steam, it's like 58%.
Don't listen to fucking Steam. They're a bunch of whiners.
No, don't listen to Steam.
Okay.
Steam is cancer.
Babies.
It's cancer. It's Reddit.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's awful.
Yeah. Those are Chinese votes probably, so you can't take that.
Jesus.
Oh boy.
The Metacritic is around 84. By all measures, the game is pretty good. The single player is actually really well done this time around as well. And then the zombie mode and regular, online modes are good. I've been playing a little bit, unfortunately not a lot, but I'm going to get definitely through the single player and play a little multiplayer. But yeah, the game is good. It's going to do well for the behemoth that is Activision Blizzard, fucking Microsoft, Bethesda, whatever it is. Anyway, that's all I got on that one.
What about the subscription thing, Kress? Like, I so wanted to hear your rant. I mean, we don't probably know enough yet, but there was articles around, people estimating how many subscriptions they think this was going to drive, what the cannibalization of, downloads that this was going to be.
No. I mean, look, it's cannibalistic by definition almost, right? Like, regardless how many people they get to the subscribers, get through the subscriptions, it's just a straight loss, I think, to revenue they'd be generating. But the fact that it's on every platform kind of offsets that to some degree. But it's such a big release. It's really the only big release in holiday. So it has no competition. So it'll be fine. But I don't think this is going to be a big win that Microsoft needs to change the landscape of console. I mean, they're still getting fucking destroyed, right? I mean, they're getting annihilated this cycle. I want to be clear on this point, right? Like, they are losing so badly. There's no way they can recover, right? This cycle, how much they're losing on the hardware side. So it's a disaster for them. But Call of Duty will sell well on PlayStation, on PC, and will do whatever it does for Xbox.
I am shit-faced every time I visit this franchise. It is an NBA case study in how to build and grow a franchise. Bobby has not only built the supply side, he got these factories going. So you have cascading studios releasing every single year, which is fucking brilliant. And I was always under the hypothesis that you're like satiating demand with each release, but it turns out each release grew demand. There's actually like kind of this connective, tissue effect. And I think you're really seeing with this game and with the last one is that it's every problem that we faced in Battlefield, which is that you have all these different theaters of war, people get attached to a particular theater of war, and then you really scatter your player base across a bunch of different titles once they choose a preference. So Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5, Battlefield 2042, all the time we see players log into this game. Even now, they're distributed. And you see this in, I'm sure, Call of Duty's numbers is that they're still playing different versions of the game. You're not monetizing your base as well as you could be. And so how do we change that? And I think that's one thing that they've been trying to solve. And so when you launch this game, you're launching the Call of Duty app like it was last year. That's why when you look at we're looking at the Steam chart right now, there's just Call of Duty. We can't separate out the different titles because it's a single app. And when you go into the interface, I mean, it sounds like an executive designed it when you look at the UX, but you can see the thesis here, right?
Yeah.
You're right. It looks like it's the Netflix UI, but you can go into different experiences across the Call of Duty platform. You remember last year you could transfer guns over. That's not the case this year. You are starting fresh. They've been trying to unify a lot of these things. There's a Call of Duty engine that they're trying to unify things around. Like, why do I continue to build the same fucking store over and over again? This was a thing I heard all the time at EA. Why are we building the same fucking store over and over again? And so they're unifying things on the supply side. They're unifying things on the front end, and they're using it as a platform, right? So now the Call of Duty isn't just an arena shooter. It's a platform for a bunch of first-person shooter experiences. So they added Battle Royale. They tried to add extraction shooter, which didn't go very well, as I think we can tell now. They're back to thinking about co-op with zombies in this version. There's a single player, which always satiates some demand. And they also, remember, they also tried their hand at large-scale battles. there were 64 player battles recently. So they're taking swipes at everyone, but they realize that Call of Duty is really a platform for a variety of experiences now. And just like hats off to Bobby for like executing against the strategy over 20 years. It's been over 20 years this franchise has been pumping, and he's built it and he's built it and he's built it. And I think you're really starting to see, you know, that executive PowerPoint slide come to fruition in a unified experience. I don't know if this is a good idea, to be frank. It's very hard to pull this off. It requires a lot on the management to be able to get this stuff to work. I think we all know all about what happened with a unified Frostbite engine. But by and large, I'm just astonished at this franchise continuing to evolve rather than, you know, any sort of revolution. It's always been about evolution.
What happened to Battlefield?
Well, oh boy, how much time do we got?
Yeah,
a lot of things happen to Battlefield.
Well, can you say just in a few words? Because I remember like it used to be Battlefield and Call of Duty.
Yeah, here would be my argument for what happened with Battlefield. There was a variety of things, just to be clear. But when you look at the amount of headcount in Call of Duty, it's very reflective in their content output. You think back to like what was DICE's highest retaining title? Without question, it was Battlefield 4. Battlefield 1 sold the most amount of copies. It was the only time we beat Call of Duty. Battlefield 4 held on to the strongest retentive effect. And it's pretty obvious why, is that we had a bunch of shit. We had a bunch of shit that you could customize and that you could ultimately play around with. We ramped up the RPG aspect to a really high degree. And then you think about the amount of content we shipped in 2042. If you just compare across the same vectors, how many guns there are, how many maps there are, it's radically different. The RPG element has been minimized. So I think in many ways, Battlefield is a subject of underinvestment by EA, malinvestment by EA. And I think
Star Wars, that was big.
Star Wars took up, there was a period of time where DICE was shipping, I think it was, 6 games over like a 4-year period. Remember, we shipped Battlefield 1, we shipped Mirror's Edge, we shipped Battlefield 2, we shipped Battlefield 5. I mean, it was a really short period of time where DICE was shipping a shit ton of titles. That really hurt the studio in a really large regard. And we didn't have the headcount that Call of Duty had. I mean, look they have 3,000 people working on the fucking franchise now. It's insane.
Fuck.
They had lost the game well before that.
Battlefield?
Yeah, the Swedes just mismanaged that platform, right? They didn't build a platform. They stayed true to their own vision of what a shooter should be, and that was not where the market moved, right?
What do you think we got wrong on the gameplay side? I think we've always stuck true to what Battlefield is, what made it successful.
Well, ironically, well, all right, this is a long conversation.
Right.
Why don't we do this next time?
On the next one.
Next shooter panel.
So thank you everybody for listening. Mega long episode. Come back next week when the crew will be here. I'm not. Anyways, thank you. Bye.
Later.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. As a fan of the show, it would help us out if you subscribe and leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. More importantly, are you a member of the Deconstructor of Fun Slack group? If you have 5 years or more of games industry experience, go to deconstructoroffun.com/Slack and apply to join. Join the games industry's best professional community filled with peers always willing to lend a hand. Or subscribe to our newsletter to get all the latest insights from the Deconstructor of Fun content creators. Thanks for listening.